Hi, welcome to Asian Sky Group, Asian Sky Media's virtual charter week. I'm Jeff Lowe, Managing Director of Asian Sky Group. For a copy of the 2020 charter report, please go to www.asianskymedia.com. Otherwise, enjoy the presentation. Thank you for tuning in. COVID-19, we're going to leave that now. The other big issue that we face, the big issue that I always try to address as well is illegal charter. And I guess one of the interesting questions I had, just to start this one off, is COVID-19 providing an opportunity for more illegal charter, or is it just that the whole market is so depressed it's not flourishing at the moment? It is a problem that I think we need to address, not just in Asia, but everywhere. But I think it's particular. Well, maybe just because I know the Asia Pacific region better, it's certainly an issue we have over here and we face constantly. I guess, Ian, your views on the illegal charter at the moment, what you see in Asia, do you see it? Does it affect you at all? Or is COVID-19 providing an opportunity for more of that to go on at this point in time, or what's your feeling at this point?
Yeah, well, first of all, obviously, anyone who runs a commercial, Part 135 operation, are incredibly frustrated with any illegal charter that occurs.
Yes.
Just the corners that can be cut, in terms of just what you need to do from a cost perspective to be a Part 135 just makes it a very unfair playing field. And
yes.
So, yeah, and for us, because we own and operate all our aircraft, we are the ones who are taking the financial shelter, or giving shelter to our clients on the financials of depreciation and so forth. We find it very frustrating when anyone's able to undercut us. Full well when you are, because you look at the price, and some of these price points just can't be done unless you're cutting corners. And so whether COVID has made that worse or better, it's difficult to gauge. It's been an interesting time in the market for sort of aircraft management, aircraft capacity in the marketplace since about March, right? Because at one stage we had, as we talked about, March was an incredible month in terms of flying. Just the activity. Minnie talked about the number of movements in the region, but also to just the kind of flying we're doing. You saw a huge amount of activity, but we saw a lot of aircraft pulled from the market at that time as well, from owners who wanted to keep their aircraft with them, to keep them with them because they wanted to know whether they didn't know when they needed to leave, right? Or they wanted to know who was on their aircraft. I'm sure the same would have been for an Airbnb. A lot of places would have been available and suddenly not available because you want to control who's in your house or in your aircraft. Yep. So I think since that point, there's been definitely some pressed charter prices in the marketplace, and maybe that discourages some of these sort of customers or owners
but
who are out there that were taking it.
Is it as big an issue for you? I mean, I'm going to get round to Keith, and I sort of, I guess maybe incorrectly, I think this is a problem that Keith deals with every day, because most of his if you will, his charter requirements are originating in the Asia Pacific region. Again, I kind of tag you, VistaJet, more as global, and I don't know if illegal charter is such a big issue in Europe and in the United States, where I think it's policed better, and the regulatory authorities do a better job. So I don't know if it's big of an impact
depends on where you are.
Yeah,
it depends on where you are. Like Europe and the US, I would say for sure, you're right. It's better policed, and you probably have more of a mature market there. So people have gone through the swings and roundabouts and see the disadvantages of Part 91 in the charter market. But I would say the Middle East, maybe sort of in other regions, India, sort of the Russia and the CIS regions, there's still some areas that, although they're cracking down more and more, there's still that sort of history of being some illegal charter that's been done. We do a lot of work in and out of Africa, in and out of South America as well. Naturally, unfortunately, they're just not as mature, and so therefore they probably don't have the investment into policing it as what maybe, you know, North America and Europe have done. So no, it's definitely a global problem. The impact of it for our business, you know, obviously we're not really, for our 100-hour packages and more, we're not really facing them, but we do have our on-demand product, and our on-demand does know when we're facing them, and it is an annoyance. And it's often the conversation you're having with a customer where they start with a anchor price of, you know, a price that's obviously been offered as an illegal charter, and that's their starting point. You're like, well,
Right.
you know what, you should take it. You should take it. You know, they've cut their corners. It's not a legal operation, insurance, et cetera, the multitude of reasons why not to do it. But if you're just looking for price, then frankly, VistaJet isn't the right offer for you. We're not the cheapest, and we don't claim to be the cheapest. And, you know, if it's too good to be true, it is too good to be true, right? And some of the pricing that comes in this marketplace is very clear that it's corners have been cut.
Keith?
Yeah, agree with every
Like I
single
said,
thing.
I imagine you face this every day in and day out.
That's it. Asia is definitely not as mature as US and Europe in terms of monitoring all the policies and all the requirements and certificate required to operate around. So for sure, illegal charters, we face it every single day. It can come out from the blue moon, all of a sudden you see someone that is offering half of what you are trying to offer. That is obviously an answer to illegal charter happening in this region. And it does happen everywhere. But the way I look at illegal charters in Asia since the pandemic back in March, perhaps we have such a big demand for people traveling globally. Most of these illegal charters requirements don't necessarily fulfill what the customers want. So, for example, they would all the illegal charters crews and the aircraft would have faced the same problems, such as quarantines or customs or visas on arrival, etc. And so the lack of the manpower to deliver the trip, especially for the long range one. As a 135 operator like us, we already have the issues of finding the right fuel stop place or location where we can perform a crew change. So imagine you're an aircraft owner carrying 4 pilots and you want to do a 20-hour trip. This is mission impossible for them. And like Ian said earlier, most of the aircraft owners are taking their own aircraft at this time, especially during this time. For the hygiene, for the safety, they don't want their planes to be touched. In fact, from what we have seen in the past few months, there are a few cases where aircraft owners came to us, and I think they used to have their planes out on the charter market. And just that because their crews are stuck in where they were back at home, so they can't fly out. And that reduced availability of illegal charter aircrafts. So in a nutshell, I think the pandemic has given us a great opportunity, particularly in Asia, where illegal charters were very active in the past. Now it has brought up the awareness, safety awareness for travelers, no matter they're new or existing private jet travelers. They will pay much close attention to safety measures, including the aircraft itself, as well as all the flight operations. There is no cutting corner for them. Right now, we are all facing the same problem.
Yeah, I think comments from both you and Ian. My expectation, and we're seeing it. One, I think the charter fleet size, the legal ones, the Part 135 operators, a lot of those aircraft out here in Asia are owner airplanes that do 50 hours a year or whatever. I think we're going to see them go away. I think if I'm an owner of an airplane, why do I want to risk that? Why do I want to have people in my airplane now? For whatever revenue it brought me for that 50 hours, it's not worth, if you will, the health of my family, because you never know where that person's been and what they're bringing with them on board. So I would assume that portion of the charter fleet is going to kind of go away. And maybe we're then left with the pure for lack of a better word, pure 135 operators out there like yourselves, OJets and VistaJet, you won't have to compete with these owner airplanes anymore that are part-time. But I think the same effect is going to be for those guys that, as you mentioned, Keith, that are doing the illegal charter. Again, I think the same thought is going to go through their head. Why do I want to do this now? And again, going back to the health and safety issues. So I guess the next question is if the available charter fleet is going to be reduced, the legitimate one, and hopefully somewhat the illegal charter is going to be impacted, is the fleet size in Asia sufficient enough to meet all the demand? Or are we going to, I mean, maybe it's good times then because you guys are going to be busy, but what do you think is going to happen then in the region regarding the fleet and whether or not it needs to be adjusted or whether are you right sized for the market then? Either one of you. The OJets. Yeah, OJets then. Okay. Yeah. So.
Okay. Well, for us, we are still having a very small fleet of only 6 aircraft in the region. And so in terms of fleet size and aircraft availability in Asia, definitely is not enough to cater the demand that we have. This is even pre-pandemic, we had planned of expanding, but now due to the pandemic, I think the global economy is getting hit. But more for us, in aviation, is the policy changes. And I guess everyone is sort of waiting and wanting to see what's the outcome. When are we going to lift all these bans among worldwide? So for us to operate a fleet, I think we are at a good size now in order to staying, lean and mean, being able to cope with any sort of change that may bring along by the pandemic. But from Asia's, when the illegal charters aircrafts are keeping quiet and silence at this stage, we also need to get ready for once all the bans are gone, is the charter culture is going to move back to where it were before the COVID.
Right. And
this is the biggest concern that we have. Right now, we're spending lots of time with our clients, whether they're new or hybrid, in terms of the educations. Most of these clients, they get resources from everywhere. As soon as they mention about the price differences, the moment we see it, we knew this is coming from the illegal charter part of the world. So we spend lots of time to educate him in terms of the Asian regulations, how we operate, safety standards for Part 135, and what are the costs like among all the countries. As you know, in Asia, we carry the highest cost in terms of paying for all the infrastructures to be able to operate around in Asia. So these are not part of illegal charters element. This is not something they need to care of, because illegal charters, all they need is to fund the extra bit so that they can cover up their running costs daily. But for the real charter customers that are looking for the travel around in Asia, they need to understand this comes with a price tag. And this is something we are spending lots of efforts to educate customer. And hopefully we can contain them by the time when the pandemic is gone. The charter culture is there, so set as a solid stone.
Yeah, I would add in terms of fleet-wise, if you'd asked me in sort of mid to late March whether we had enough aircraft, the answer to that would have been absolutely not. You asked me sort of mid-April, I would have said, way too many. I still think in general, the business model of VistaJet is to maneuver our aircraft around where our customers need them. And if Asia is an area that needs to have a higher demand for our aircraft, then we'll move them into that area. And for us, for example, the one aircraft we're super excited about is our Global 7500. We feel that aircraft has got a huge amount of footprint and already captured the minds of the Asian customer, and they're already excited about it. Now, they may not have the means or the need to take it now, but certainly when they're flying globally now, they would like to do it non-stop, and they would like to do that if they're going to cross continents. They'd like to do it as efficient as possible. So you know, we're comfortable with our fleet size. We've done a lot of hard work over the last 10 years to build up a global customer base. And if there's more demand here because there's less aircraft, less one-off or smaller 50-hour size aircraft in the marketplace, then we'll be happy to take that demand. But I think it's going to be very interesting. I think every operator in the world is going to have to be on their feet, ready to maneuver, ready to upsize or downsize as quickly as they can. Because we may be through another lockdown, and we may go through a time when some of the restrictions are released. You know, I think the whole of North America and Europe as an operator are waiting for those two borders to open up. And then there's going to be a huge amount of travel going back and forth. Hopefully, touch wood, Hong Kong and Singapore get ahead of their curves and are able to open up a little bit more. My own country in Australia, hopefully sooner rather than later, they're able to open up. And then you're going to see a whole this pent up demand of people that haven't been able to conduct business or haven't been able to do what they normally do. So I think it's just a matter of every company in the world in this industry needs to be nimble and needs to be ready for the new norm. But, you know, if you've been in private aviation for a while, we've always been used to this, you know, whether it's an economic downturn, could be an Asia debt crisis, a European debt crisis, the GFC. We had Ebola in West Africa there at one stage. We had Crimea and Russia. I mean, we had the Arab Spring. I mean, it's an industry that we know that we've had to, by being in this industry for so long, you've had to be, you know, ready for anything. And, you know, I think that's why, you know, why everyone in this industry, it's not, this is a horrific time to go through as a globe, but, you know, we're used to regional challenges, and this is a unique one because it's global, but, you know, we've always had to be nimble because of just the cost structure in this business. So, you know, we will continue to be at VistaJet. We're ready for it, and I'm sure every other operator is as well.
Yeah, I think, as you say, I think I hope we're going to see regionally things open up sooner, just because we've been dealing with this longer. So, you know, we're already talking about travel bubbles and specific origin and destination city pairs, and trying to find a way to operate more openly on those routes. So hopefully, and this will hopefully benefit you, OJets, as well, in that we'll see a lot of that north-south traffic here in Asia return.
For sure.
May take a little bit longer before we're doing the long hauls to the West Coast and London, but that's sort of where I think we'll see the developments first. Mm-hmm. I agree with the pent-up element. We were talking about it yesterday as all part of our charter week here, and I think there's going to be some pent-up demand, but new pent-up demand where we had a lot of people that have just, you know, been pushing off for year after year doing that special trip that they wanted to do. And now that, as you said, Ian, now that you've been stuck in your basement for 4 months and only traveled 5 days, you suddenly realize that, you know, I really need to do that trip. You know, I put it off and put it off. And it's sort of, you know, nobody thought they would ever experience a pandemic in their lifetime. Well, you have now. And I got to think that changes your perspective. And there's a lot of trips on bucket lists that I think are going to be, you know, people are going to be looking to tick those off now. And so I think, at least I hope, you're going to see a lot of demand coming from that side of it as well, where people are going to finally get around to doing what they've said they're going to do, because your perspective has changed a little bit. So now,
agreed.
Just touching again a little bit on the legal charter. I mean, but what can you do about it, really? Okay, you know, Ian, Keith, and I don't know what role the Hong Kong BAC can play. I think it sounds like we all know when it's going on, but what can we do about it, actually?
Well, ultimately, it's about educating your clients, as Keith mentioned earlier. You know, we're very upfront and honest. If the price comes across that we can't match, we'll tell them why we can't match it. That's all you can do. You know, ultimately, as an industry, we should be on top of it. We should be working with ASBA, and we should be working with.
Yeah, I was gonna touch on that. I think there's a role for ASBA to play here as our association here in the Asia Pacific region, and so they have to be somewhat the torchbearer. But it seems at the ground roots level, we all know what's going on, and yet do we need to start reporting operators that we think are doing this? I don't even know if you can do that. I don't know who you would call. So I don't know even if there's a way to try to, for us to self-police this part of the industry. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's difficult to gauge because, if you are, who do you call and does the
Yeah.
customer care? And, are you, it's happening so regularly and so quickly that, as I said, all we can do on a case by case basis is educate your customer as much as you can. Deal with brokers, for example, that, are well aware and have a certain standard and not looking just to create a spread. Brokers have a big part to play in this. What are they putting in front of their customer? And, that's why we like dealing with, with brokers that we've dealt with for many years, and they've built up relationships, and those relationships have been, forged ongoing through times like this, where they've had to get customers out and they've had to go with an operator they trust, and it's a mutually beneficial relationship. You just need to, it's an industry that probably needs to grow up a little bit. And, we're the first industry that, one of the industries that doesn't really have, much qualifications for sales. You have, a lot of qualifications on the safety side and so forth, but as a salesperson, you can just sort of turn up. You don't need a license to be a broker, not like you do in real estate or something on those lines. So, we might need to put things in place like that. But we, VistaJet, we get around that by working with brokers that we know, we trust, and we know that they value what we do. And that's what you're looking for, right? You're looking for customers, either indirect or direct, that value what you've invested in to create value. And if they don't, then frankly, they take a risk and they're never going to be our customer anyway, and that's the way it's going to work.
I guess my feeling would be, in today's day and age, why would you take the risk? But, Minnie?
And yeah, for BAC, we followed the tightly managed regulations from Hong Kong CAD, the Civil Aviation Department. Once they approve the landing slots for the aircraft for the passengers, we will accept handling. But we feel that it's unlikely for that great charter to be increasing trend in Hong Kong, with the fact that very stringent regulations, or as Ian said, I think the culture of Asian people, they care most of the ownership rather than sharing, and they care most on the health, their personal health. But having said that, if we encounter any problems that give cause for alarm, we will report to CAD, and we did so before. But of course, the customer's privacy is the top of our priority.
Keith?
I think we have a lot of torch holders such as ASPA to take the lead on and guide us through in terms of enhancing the policy and helping each other to police this situation. But I totally agree of what I think it's definitely need is a centralized authority to make sure these activities get penalized. Until people get hit by the stone, they won't learn. And for us, it's very difficult job, both in terms of operators and FBOs. Essentially, we are both service providers. So how do we make our resources to make sure illegal charters activities are not taking place? We are missing that central figure, such as the authority, someone that can make to be the judge, seem to be able to make a call on this flight or that flight, or we just don't have such a central organizations or jurisdiction. So I really hope that based on the pandemic coming out, you see how different governments around the world trying to bring health issues similarly to what they would do for aviation, and come up with some jurisdiction where people like us as suppliers, we can report, or come up with policies where everybody has to follow. I hope this change is coming along. But right now, because of the pandemic, I think all the governments, authorities are purely focusing on the health issues or travel restrictions. Therefore, for us to stay in the current market to operate and being able to identify what illegal charters are coming out next, are very, very difficult. We just don't even know whether those owners or aircraft would still be exist or when they would fly again. I think it is a very difficult job for us to be able to contribute more at this stage in terms of killing the illegal charters.
Yeah, I agree. I think there has to be someone that takes up the cause, and that really should be ASBA and through the regional chapters as well. So we're going to have to try to wrap this up. I know it's getting late for you, Ian, as well. But just one last general question then, and I thank you for your views on the illegal charter. Charter in Asia Pacific, you know, what's the thorn in your side that if you had the chance, you could change it? What do you think we need to do here in the Asia Pacific region to make it better, if you will? I'll start with you, Minnie. How's that? I mean, what do you think needs to change? What, if you could change, what would you do? So.
Actually, before this COVID-19, we have been studying the trend of the charter market, and we found that from 2017 to 2019, it has an uncompound growth rate of time. So we recognize that it's in a growing trend other than the owner market. I would expect that it may not happen tomorrow to grow up immediately. Whether it's a U-shaped recovery or V-shaped recovery, it all depends on the market or the regulations of different countries. But as an FBO, we are quite optimistic about this market because we don't need any load factors. It's just on demand and from point to point, whenever route required. So whenever customer requires that the business is here. Maybe let me share a case that back to 2017, maybe all you guys recall when we have a challenge about the landing slot in Hong Kong International Airport. We do runs of lobbying with the government officials, and then we think of some win-win situation in utilizing the slots. When we were in the business in 2017, in general, the business jets is going up in 5 to 8%. But particularly charter flights is pick up in over 30% in 2018. So we are still optimistic about that sector of business. And as I said earlier, because the demographics of the clientele are changing, I think what we do is to understand what they need and to give the exact service that come to their satisfaction.
So what you want is more hangars and a bigger parking ramp, right?
We're always doing that, Jeff.
Right. Well, business, as you say, business is growing. So I know you're constrained already. So if anything, I would have thought on your wish list for sure would have been more slots, bigger parking ramp, a couple more hangars. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Yeah. Because again, I think for you, you're going to have to wait till that third runway appears before there's going to be any more, if you will, green space for people to build on out at the airport. So got some challenges ahead of you as far as space constraints. So, Keith?
Yeah, I think this is likewise the same space where we can look into not only for Hong Kong, for BAC, but it's for.
You're out of Seletar, right?
That's right. Our office is just off the one way on the side from at Seletar.
Yeah, it's getting tougher to operate out of Seletar these days.
But if you look at Singapore and Hong Kong has got one airport that is operational for commercial and private general aviations. Singapore has two, Changi and Seletar. But Seletar, even with two airports, with the FBOs and all the maintenance MRO facilities in one locations, this is not the same.
And some domestic services now, right?
And some domestic services as well. But having all that facilities available, it doesn't mean that you get the same treatment elsewhere. So one thing for Asia, or Asia charter market in particular, is we have seen lots of consistent growth in the past. But there's still very strong resistance too from the lack of infrastructures and difficult aviation policies that we have very little room or very little influence on.
Infrastructure. There's not enough of it. So.
From ground operations or FBOs or airport slots availability, we all need to raise awareness in our industry to have the right mindset between luxury and leisure travelers. And policies makers, infrastructures, they do not change overnight. So what can we do as how can we grow our pie and make the market or make the region bigger? We have to focus on the fundamental difference in Asia, because it's not only about how strong your experience are flying around in the countries or how familiar you are with all the professionals in the regions. No matter how better team you have that understand all the cultures and even, let's say, holiday seasons, there is only very little we can influence on from the government bodies to make this policy updated, or in so to say, to update so that we can catch up more traffic, more facilities, to get away the red tape policies or the cabotage. It's almost everywhere in every countries in Asia. So chartering in Asia Pac is really primarily for elite business owners and not as common for, you know, personal or leisure travel as what we have seen from other part of the world. So to come back to what we can do to make our charter operation or charter market bigger is that we need to focus on addressing the fundamental difficulties and overcome live with it. And this is not easy.
And it's not going to happen overnight either, unfortunately.
Exactly. This is something we can't just forget about it overnight either, and we have to find a way through.
It has to be consistently on the agenda, or else it'll never get addressed. So, Ian.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Minnie and Keith and yourself, Jeff, have probably covered it all. I mean, it's infrastructure with a capital I, right? I mean, it's about having, parking availability, but it's also about coordination between countries, having, permit lead times need to come down. You need to have slots. It's all great to be able to leave from one location, but you need to be able to arrive at another. If you have 2 slot restricted airports, matching those up could be incredibly difficult. The region needs more infrastructure investment from every country. I mean, it is the one thing I would say, and maybe this is just we're eternal optimists over here at VistaJet, maybe, but it's going to take commercial aviation some time to come back. And there's a lot of these secondary routes which are actually perfect for private jets, which means there's
a great opportunity right now. There's a great opportunity.
Correct. So this is our time, right? We're filling the gap of commercials, probably second tier commercial cities, right? Which is fine, and that's really what private jets really were started off being, and we now have a bigger say, and airports are going to need our business, right? So this is the opportunity for us as an industry, and with ASBA and regions around the world. We need to start making our voices heard, because our money is as effective and is welcome now when a lot of the airlines have grounded 80% of their fleet. So before COVID, there was no doubt there was a huge amount of infrastructure requirements and coordination within countries and between countries, creating slots, etc. Parking availability, permit lead time. But what really COVID has created is an opportunity for private jets to be in more of the mainstream, and being more of the mainstream needs, therefore, probably a bigger say when it comes to infrastructure usage across the world. And so this is our chance to put our hand up, and we're going to be flying aircraft around, and we need to have things made a little bit easier and a little bit more available to us to do that. And we've always said, whenever there's a private jet arriving at a location, probably 60 or 70% of the time that's bringing in money for the country it's landing in. Yeah. All right. So these are business tools. It's great to have the caviar and the champagne on board, but I think that's very 1980s, 1990s view of private jets. We're really now creating time, creating business, creating relationships that will increase GDP for countries, and we need to be seen that way. And this is our chance to probably get more of a conversation which would have been drowned out, 4 or 5 months ago.
And for me, that the challenge of lack of infrastructure in a double-edged sword kind of way is it also separates the men from the boys. as I always tell everyone, you know, the good operators, the OJets of the world, the VistaJets of the world, for the guy in the back cabin, you make that transparent for him. I mean, yes, good operators, and again, the ones that are experienced, been operating in the region, the legitimate ones, okay, they've got the people in place. They've spent the money to make sure that that infrastructure actually doesn't impact the guy in the back. It's a hell of a lot of work for you in the front, if you will, and back office and everything else. But, you know, what separates, like I said, you guys from the not so good guys is you can handle that and you make it sort of transparent for the guy in the back. So,
yeah, experience counts, right? You know, in any
experience
industry,
counts. Experience counts.
Yeah,
All right, everyone, it's been my pleasure. We could probably talk for another hour, but I've got some ladies over to the right over here that are telling me time's up. So I must thank you all for your time. Keith and Minnie.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, we'll all get back on to the rest of our day, but Ian, you can finally close down for the night, maybe.
I will do.
Maybe.
Thank you very much.
But thank you all very much for your time. It's been great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Minnie.
Thanks, Ian.